As explained, there are several factors that contribute to understanding the increasing global population and how it's come to be. And so far, increasing global population doesn't seem to be such a good thing. As a matter of fact, there are several consequences that come with a growing population. This section of the video will be discussing why an increased global population could be a problem. Amongst scientists, economists, and demographers, there is a general consensus that a high global population should be considered a problem for several reasons. One of the fundamental reasons it poses a problem to is the availability of natural resources. The Earth only has a finite amount of natural resources for humans to use. Let's use water as an example. For 71% of the Earth is covered in water, and only 2.1% of that water is fresh water. And of the amount of fresh water we have, only 0.03% is readily available to humans through lakes and groundwater. Now, water is a pretty essential thing, and there are currently 783 million people out of the 7 billion that currently inhabit the Earth that don't have access to clean water. Now make that 7 billion, 10 billion, and imagine how many more people wouldn't have access to clean water. The same reasoning can be applied to other natural resources such as land usage for agriculture and food, and coal for electricity. With an increase in global population, the global consumption will grow. And with these increased consumption rate, there is also an increase for demand of resources like coal, cotton, corn, etc. Although one has to understand that consumption increases differently in different sections of the globe. For instance, it is predicted that 99% of the global population growth will occur in developing. And within these developing nations, the resource consumption is typically low. But because it's initially low, an increase in population will raise consumption per household, although not in a way that is statistically significant. Though not immensely significant, the population and consumption will still require developing nations to heighten their use of their natural resources. And this increasement could develop into two problems regarding environmental degradation. Environmental degradation is the destruction of the environment through consumption of resources such as air, water, land, and soil. And eventually, this destruction leads to the destruction of ecosystem, habitat destruction, the extinction of wildlife, and pollution. This can occur if a large population relies on the same limited resources. For instance, imagine that there are 4 tribes living together in a subdivision of an African nation. And in these nations, water and land resources are essential to survival. In this situation, an increase in their population would cause each tribe to use a lot more water and a lot more land. Now everyone is using more of the same limited resource. And said resource doesn't have the ability to replenish itself at a rate at which it is being consumed. Therefore, these 4 tribes could end up consuming all of the available resources. If this is the case, they'd have to migrate elsewhere in order to find viable and available resources to survive on. Now, many people may question why this is a problem, people moving. It is because consuming all resources and moving elsewhere and doing the same thing over and over again perpetuates the cycle of environmental degradation and natural resource depletion. The following problem is lifestyle resources. Lifestyle resources refers to things such as occupation, education, and house markets. With an increase in population, all of these markets can become highly competitive. But once again, there is only a limited amount of resources. Because there are not enough jobs, houses, or higher education, millions of people could go without. And because of a lack of adequate living standards or opportunities, people migrate as another option to find these things. But in this migration, the tribal 2 nation wouldn't have the means to assimilate for an increase in population. This goes back to our first problem of environmental degradation. It could also push to a new problem of politics, foreign policies, and national security. Because of a large population and more competitive housing and job markets, it would be hard for low-skilled native workers to compete against immigrants who traveled in search of any job they were offered. This could lead to civil and social unrest as internal tensions within the nation's inhabitants heighten. Another problem that could arise from a mass people migration is that of national security. In this mass migration, which can happen legally or illegally, the government doesn't have enough vast resources to accurately screen all the people entering the country. With this, it is problematic because a national threat could enter the country within the blink of an eye. And if this were to happen, these threats could contribute to catastrophic events and an increase in crime within said nation. Overall, there are several reasons as to why overpopulation can result in problematic situations all over the globe.